Audio capture is rolling. We are writing direct to the local drive right now.
Good. Bypass the cloud ingestion layers entirely. Sever the external routing protocols.
Yeah, that's done. There are no third-party APIs listening to this feed. I mean, no vendor analytics scraping the waveform for sentiment analysis. We are maintaining bare metal custody of this file from the first syllable to the last.
Exactly. And when this session concludes, you're physically pulling the drive and walking it out of this room.
That's the protocol. So, to you listening, this is a local telemetry capture. Consider this session 0.
Session 0 is the precise designation for this operation.
In
Tabletop gaming environments, session 0 is where the participants sit down before the campaign even begins to establish the physical and mechanical rules of reality.
Right, you figure out the boundaries.
Yes. You define the boundaries, you map the perimeter, and you ensure absolute clarity on the baseline physics of the world you are about to inhabit. Our mission for this deep dive is identical. We are compiling a highly specific stack of source material detailing the SAFE HOD protocol and the foundational architecture of Beige Software's localized toolsets.
Specifically, we're looking at Tenure, Chrysalis, and Papillon.
Correct. And to deploy those tools, we must first extract the raw, unvarnished ground truth of the environment we are currently operating within. Because the modern internet is no longer a shared utility, it is an extraction trap. Today, we define the mechanics of survival.
And the environment you were describing is, well, it's hostile by design, and we need to be explicitly clear with you listening right now. This telemetry capture is not a pitch for shiny corporate technology.
No, not at all.
If you were looking for, like, a white knight sauce product to magically optimize your workflow or some cloud-based overlay to synergize your paradigms, you are in the wrong room. You should unplug now.
You're looking for corporate slop, and this isn't it.
Right. We are examining an epistemic operating system. And when we say epistemic operating system, we are not talking about a piece of software that runs your spreadsheets.
No, we are talking about a structural framework for how to process reality. It is a system designed to evaluate the integrity of incoming data streams in a world that fundamentally lies to you.
We are looking at the raw, unsanded survival gear required to build an independent freehold in the wreckage of corporate monopolies.
The corporate monopoly is what the structural telemetry defines as the beige world. It is a sanitized, heavily friction-mapped environment constructed for one singular purpose, the absolute and continuous extraction of human context.
Yeah, constant mining.
Yes. To comprehend the necessity of a toolset like Papillon or Tenure, you have to fully internalize the sheer mechanical absurdity of the ecosystem you are currently forced to inhabit. The sources define this environment through two primary mechanisms, the extraction paradox and the SaaS rent trap.
Basically meaning you are paying a premium monthly subscription for the privilege of being mined for your own behavioral data.
Functionally, yes, you finance your own surveillance.
Let's map out that extraction process, because it isn't an abstract concept. It is the ambient background radiation of modern life. We see this constantly.
Every single day.
Right. So you view a baby stroller online. Just a single click. I mean, perhaps you navigated to the wrong URL. Perhaps you were researching a gift for a colleague.
The initial intent is irrelevant. The machine doesn't care why you clicked.
Exactly. The intent doesn't matter. The moment your IP address pings that specific product identifier, the extraction machine executes a cascading metadata failure across your entire digital footprint.
It's instantaneous.
For the next 6 months, you are tracked and hunted by automated data brokers. Every domain you visit assumes you are expecting a child. Your health insurance algorithms quietly adjust your risk profile. Your credit targeting shifts.
Your digital identity is entirely hijacked, recompiled and rewritten by an automated efficiency trap that ingested one stray, contextless data point and mathematically hallucinated a wholly fabricated trajectory for your biological life.
And it does this millions of times a second to everyone.
But the tracking mechanism you are describing is merely the visible surface layer. It's just the user interface of the extraction trap. Beneath that surface lies a catastrophic structural failure that enterprise organizations mask with a concept called the illusion of compliance.
Security theater.
Absolute security theater. The beige world does not demand actual security. Examine the password metrics enforced by banking institutions and enterprise software.
Oh, this is the best part.
They demand a 14-character string. They require a combination of uppercase letters, 3 arbitrary non-alphanumeric symbols,
Mathematically verified haiku.
and the blood type of a firstborn hamster. You are forced to memorize algorithmic gibberish under the guise of endpoint protection.
Right, while they hemorrhage money out the back door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, that exact same institution is bleeding $80,000 a month on automated cloud monitoring tools, predictive AI analytics, and outsourced threat detection dashboards.
Just massive bloat.
Solely to have a single, exhausted, underpaid web administrator manually restart a broken service container at 4 o'clock in the morning because their entire brittle, overly complex architecture collapsed under the weight of its own dependencies.
The theater of it is staggering.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the architectural equivalent of an enterprise office building installing a multi-million-dollar military-grade biometric retinal scanner on a reinforced titanium front door.
A very shiny door.
Very shiny. But if you walk around the perimeter, to the back of the server room, the entire rear wall is constructed of cheap, unpainted drywall.
Unfinished drywall.
Right. And someone, probably a third-party vendor looking for a shortcut, has cut a massive unauthorized cat door straight through the drywall so their stray data scrapers can just wander in and out of the internal network at will.
That cat door is the most accurate mechanical representation of a SOC2 compliance certificate in existence.
Wow.
A SOC2 certificate, or any standard enterprise compliance framework, is mathematically hollow. It does not stop a stateless AI agent from scraping your proprietary data out of a server's memory at runtime.
Not at all.
It does not prevent an algorithmic bulldozer from systematically leveling your internal communication infrastructure. A compliance certificate merely proves that an organization paid an auditor to verify that they had a printed internal policy document saying that such a catastrophic breach shouldn't happen.
It's literally a piece of paper taped over the cat door, flapping in the wind.
And hoping the scrapers respect the ink.
Right. And observing this failure, laughing at the unadulterated lunacy of the biometric scanner mounted next to the drywall cutout, isn't just us venting our frustrations. The SAFE-HOOD protocol defines this reaction as a diagnostic tool.
It is a critical diagnostic.
When you recognize the absurdity, you identify the logic leak. It mathematically proves that the entire foundation of centralized cloud security is structurally compromised.
Fundamental.
If the infrastructure cannot secure the perimeter, the entire concept of ambient trust collapses. We are forced to confront the single, catastrophic philosophical void at the center of modern technology.
Which is the absolute lack of bare metal custody.
Exactly.
The surrender of physical sovereignty is the root vulnerability. This establishes the core operational baseline of session zero trust.
And we should define that because they use that phrase on billboards now.
They do, and they've ruined it. When we deploy the term zero trust, we are actively rejecting the sterilized corporate cybersecurity buzzword that vendors use to sell you a new firewall.
Right, it's not a product feature.
No, we are defining an unyielding fundamental refusal to allow external entities to administrate your internal reality. Zero trust is the heavy, undeniable realization that ownership is not optional.
It's a physics problem.
The physics are simple. If you do not hold the physical root credentials, you do not own the system. You are merely a tenant occupying space in someone else's data farm, waiting for the algorithmic rent to increase or the terms of service to shift beneath your feet.
But the tech sector has spent a decade conditioning us to rely on assumed trust. The workflow is practically Pavlovian at this point.
It's learned helplessness.
Exactly. We blindly upload our most sensitive operational data, our unencrypted financial ledgers, our internal communications, directly into a third-party vendor's cloud ingestion layer.
Just handing it over.
We cross our fingers and we assume they will behave. We assume their SOC2 paper holds up. We assume their proprietary AI agents aren't quietly siphoning our operational telemetry to train their next-generation language models.
Operating a system on the assumption that a vendor will behave is a fatal mechanical error. It's a joke.
Right.
The SAFE-HOOD protocol eliminates assumed trust and replaces it entirely with cryptographic proof. You do not ask an artificial intelligence to digitally sign a policy document promising it will not analyze your restricted files.
Because it will just ignore the document.
Of course it will. You construct a mathematical architecture where it is physically and computationally impossible for that AI agent to execute a read command on the data.
It just hits a wall.
You enforce a boundary where the underlying math simply does not contain the parameters to allow the extraction to occur. This is the only verified defense against the efficiency trap.
Let's talk about the efficiency trap. The source material repeatedly frames efficiency as a threat, which goes against every instinct in the modern tech sector. I mean, frictionless transactions and seamless integrations are exactly what the Beige world uses to market its products. Why is the drive for efficiency categorized as a system failure?
Because the corporate push for frictionless processing is toxic to biological systems. It systematically strips away human nuance.
How so?
Human cognition, what the telemetry refers to as the human OS, requires high-friction processes to function accurately. It relies on the digestion of information, historical context, and the passage of time to evaluate truth.
Right, we need time to think.
The Beige world, conversely, optimizes for stateless, instantaneous data transfer to maximize its profit margins. Stateless, meaning the system retains no memory, no context, and no relational understanding between transactions. It simply processes the immediate input as rapidly as possible.
Just a binary pipeline.
Yes. In optimizing their architecture for frictionless corporate efficiency, they optimize the biological human out of the verification loop entirely. They sanitize the environment until it is devoid of sovereign intent, replacing human decision-making with automated, stateless algorithms.
I have to challenge the practicality of this, though. I mean, if the baseline rule is that assumed trust is a fatal error, and we are required to rely on absolute, bare metal cryptographic proof for every single digital interaction, doesn't that require the operator to live in a state of constant, exhausting paranoia?
That is a common misunderstanding of the protocol.
But manually verifying the math on every single digital handshake, every file transfer, every API call, that sounds like a functionally miserable way to exist online.
You are confusing paranoia with verification. They are mechanically distinct states.
Okay, lay that out for me.
Paranoia is an emotional, biological reaction to an unknown and unquantifiable threat. Verification is a mechanical, system-level process that eliminates the threat entirely before it executes.
So the system is doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. When you establish bare metal custody, when you control the physical execution layer of your own hardware, the necessity for paranoia evaporates. The environment is heavily optimized so that the unauthorized bug physically cannot survive.
She can't breathe the air in the room.
Precisely. The mathematics perform the heavy lifting. You are simply refusing to participate in an unverified system that demands blind faith in a corporate entity that mathematically views your data as a consumable resource.
So relying on their systems is essentially a corporate trust fall. But instead of falling backward into the arms of a smiling tech CEO who promises to catch you, we are choosing to fall backward directly into a multi-factor authentication wall.
A wall of math.
Wait, no, that's entirely the wrong framing. The MFA wall implies we are still trusting their software to authenticate us. If we are talking bare metal custody, we aren't falling into a wall at all. We are building our own floor.
Now you're getting it.
We are laying the concrete of mathematical proof so that we don't have to trust anyone to catch us in the first place.
Precisely. You pour the concrete, and the concrete holds the weight of your operations. However, your point regarding operator exhaustion is structurally valid.
The human burnout factor?
Yes. The biological human operating system cannot run purely on rigid, unyielding logic gates without eventually succumbing to burnout. The thermal load on human cognition is simply too high.
You just fry your circuits.
This is the exact failure point of standard corporate security environments. They offer no structural dampers for the human mind. To survive these toxic, rigid logic loops, humans naturally generate and require friction. Specifically, they require the friction of humor.
And the source stack introduces this concept as weaponized whimsy, which, it completely shifts the paradigm of how we view comedy.
It ceases to be entertainment and becomes utility.
Right. The text argues that humor isn't just a biological pressure valve or a break from heavy technical specifications. It operates as a literal cryptographic handshake. It is deployed as a high-grade cybersecurity tool to filter out automated threats.
The documents outline a strict, tactical mandate covering 3 distinct operations: reverse episematism, whimsy escalation, and the sacred clown protocol. We must define these mechanically.
Let's start with episematism.
In a biological ecosystem, episematism is a warning signal. Think of the toxic dart frog displaying bright, highly visible colors to broadcast to predators that it's lethal to consume.
So loud colors equal do not eat me.
Correct. Reverse episematism flips the polarity of that signal. You take highly complex, deeply threatening, hardened cybersecurity architecture, and you wrap it in irreverent, offbeat, deeply absurd humor.
Like camouflage.
Yes. You broadcast a signal of safety and playfulness to the human user, the independent thinkers, the sovereign operators, while simultaneously acting as a visual and auditory firewall against rigid corporate entities and automated systems that mathematically cannot parse the joke.
That makes perfect sense from a social engineering standpoint, because direct truth triggers an immediate immune response from corporate structures.
Immediate rejection.
If you walk into a boardroom and explicitly state, your enterprise system is structurally compromised, your SOC 2 compliance is a fabricated lie, and your architecture is designed to extract the souls of your user base, the beige suits will instantly categorize you as a threat and eject you from the perimeter.
Direct, unvarnished truth is treated by corporate entities as hostile code. Therefore, humor acts as a high-pass filter. It functions as a structural damper for the listener.
This is where the Sacred Clown Protocol comes in.
Yes. The Sacred Clown Protocol allows an operator to bypass institutional defenses. If you deploy whimsy as armor, if you introduce a devastating, highly technical critique of their network latency by framing it as an absurd scenario involving an iguana on a stick.
Or if you describe a massive systemic data breach as a server room overflowing with glittering kittens and alligator kibble.
Exactly. The corporate system pauses. The listeners experience a processing delay. They do not know how to categorize the input.
They don't know whether to laugh or call IT.
The absurdity lowers the activation energy required for the listener to digest the heavy underlying truth, and that truth smuggles its way past their cognitive firewall.
The telemetry explicitly names this the Angela Lansbury Protocol,
A highly effective designation.
rendering violent, edgy, or highly critical systems prompts into absolute disarming absurdities. A brilliant psychological tactic. But the claim here goes much further than psychological manipulation.
It becomes physical.
How does making a system interface look like a bizarre joke actually protect the physical hardware from a trillion-dollar tech monopoly? Does a joke translate to actual machine-level defense?
It translates directly to machine-level defense through a mechanism classified as the feral CAPTCHA.
Okay, lay out the feral CAPTCHA.
We must examine how a stateless AI agent or a corporate scraper actually functions. A brute force algorithm operates entirely on frictionless binary logic. It cannot calculate the flavor of existential defeat.
It doesn't get tired.
It possesses no historical context to parse Gen X irony. It mathematically does not understand why a specific layered meme is humorous. When a machine encounters an absurd, highly contextual human joke embedded in the system's interface or logic flow, it hesitates.
It gets stuck trying to process it.
It attempts to resolve a nonlinear, deeply contextual system into a flat, binary output, and it fails. That failure results in a localized processing loop, which creates a mathematically measurable latency spike.
Wait, so the system is actively measuring the delay in the response to the joke. It uses the processing time as an authorization metric.
Exactly. The underlying infrastructure is engineered to mathematically measure that specific latency spike. A human user parses the absurdity, groans or laughs, and clicks through the interface at a predictable biological speed.
But the bot.
When the delay falls outside the established parameters of human cognitive processing, when the timing reflects a machine endlessly looping, attempting to map an ironic pop culture reference to a logical data set, the system detects an artificial intruder.
And it drops the hammer.
It instantly triggers a hard air gap. The connection is mechanically severed. The comedy is functioning as a reverse Turing test. Bots in beige suits cannot parse the absurdity, they trigger the latency threshold, and they are ruthlessly filtered out of the network.
That is an incredible application of behavioral friction. The corporate AI trips over the joke, the system measures the trip, and the floor drops out from under it.
It is extremely elegant.
So, once the automated scrapers and the corporate drones are filtered out by the feral CAPTCHA, we are left with the exact sovereign user base we are trying to protect. We have established the philosophy of zero trust, and we understand the mechanism of smuggling truth past the static.
Now we execute.
Right, now we have to look at what we are actually protecting inside those walls. Once that air gap triggers, what is the actual infrastructure running in the dark? We deploy the raw, unsanded weapons required to physically reclaim digital sovereignty. We execute the bar software freehold toolset.
This is the execution layer, the transition from philosophy to bare metal reality. Tenure, chrysalis, and papillon. As established at the beginning of this capture, these are not white knight solutions arriving to save you.
No capes.
They are the hammer, the saw, and the concrete required to build an independent freehold from the ground up. Let us begin with the foundational bedrock of infrastructure ownership, tenure.
Tenure is designed as the direct mechanical countermeasure to the SaaS rent trap we defined earlier. I mean, look at the standard operating procedure for a modern business. You pay $900 a month minimum for a suite of cloud-based enterprise tools.
And that's just the baseline.
And the moment you scale, the moment you hire a new employee, you are hit with surprise per-seat licensing fees. You're constantly bleeding capital just to rent temporary access to your own operational data housed on someone else's server.
Tenure shatters that model by reverting to absolute bare metal principles. It operates as a managed service, but critically, it is deployed on a private, localized server architecture.
Own iron.
Bare software provisions this specific environment with highly vetted, open-source equivalents of standard, proprietary business tools. Instead of renting a corporate financial suite, you utilize accounting for your financial ledgers.
Completely self-hosted.
Instead of paying a toll for every digital signature, you deploy DocuSeal for cryptographic contracts. You run self-hosted, localized email infrastructure.
And the mechanical reality of this, the absolute core of the zero trust philosophy, is that with tenure, the operator holds the root credentials. But what does that practically mean for a business that is used to just calling a 1-800 number when their software crashes?
Holding the root credentials means you possess the cryptographic master keys to the underlying operating system. Bar software manages the deployment, they ensure the updates are patched, but you own the sovereign digital territory.
You hold the deed.
You pay a flat, predictable monthly rate for the management of the server, not a scaling toll for your own corporate growth. There are no per-seat fees, because the very concept of a per-seat fee is a corporate fiction designed to penalize success and maximize extraction.
That's a huge point.
By holding the root credentials, you mathematically prove that physical ownership is the only actual escape from algorithmic extraction. If the vendor does not possess your root access, they cannot leverage, lock, or sell your data. They are mathematically locked out of your freehold.
That solves the financial bleeding and secures the internal infrastructure. But a freehold cannot exist in total isolation. It has to interact with external tools and agents.
Inevitably.
If the internal foundation is secured, the next logical vulnerability is how you define identity and maintain the physical boundary when interacting with the outside world. This is where the structural telemetry introduces Chrysalis.
The boundary layer.
In the Beige world, if you want to deploy an app or utilize an AI agent, you are forced to go to a centralized app store. You pay the toll to Apple or Google. You are forced to exist entirely within their walled garden, subject to their arbitrary rules.
You ask for permission to use your own tools.
Chrysalis is engineered to completely bypass that ingestion layer.
Chrysalis operates as a federated capability registry. The internal documentation refers to it as a decentralized coven.
A coven. I love that phrasing.
It's accurate. It is a localized sovereign network where developers can publish agents and capabilities utilizing decentralized identifiers, or DTDs. We must define a DD mechanically.
Do it.
A digate is a cryptographic string that allows you to prove you are exactly who you say you are, without relying on a centralized authority like Apple or Google to hold the master ledger. The cryptographic key pairs are generated locally on your own hardware and anchored to a distributed network.
So there is no central toll booth. There is no corporate gatekeeper sitting on a server farm in California deciding which logic scripts are permitted to exist and which are banned.
No central point of failure or censorship.
It is a sovereign map where verified nodes can safely discover each other, verify identities cryptographically, and interact without ever surrendering their data custody to a centralized mainframe.
Correct. It is peer-to-peer verification. However, the physical reality of Chrysalis is where the aesthetic of the junkyard wizard takes absolute control.
Okay, this is where it gets weird.
The sources detail its specific hardware configuration known as Project Monarch and the robust Chrysalis, specifically focusing on the BFY002 rig. We are examining an architecture that contrasts hyper-complex, military-grade cryptography with the most absurd DIY physical environments imaginable.
And you mean that literally?
They are housing a localized, functioning artificial intelligence running on an Orange Pi 5 microcomputer board, physically shoved inside a hollowed-out, 3D-printed Super Nintendo shell.
Okay, stop the tape. We need to debate the viability of this because I can hear the operators listening to this telemetry right now thinking, wait, I'm supposed to trust my corporate data to a microcomputer stuffed inside a retro video game console.
It is visually discordant, yes.
The aesthetic dissonance is jarring. Is this DIY duct tape and soldering iron hardware actually scalable for a modern operation? I mean, can a legitimate business really run their perimeter defense on 3D printed SNES consoles?
I will reiterate the baseline mandate of this deep dive. We don't need another hero.
Right.
This protocol is explicitly not designed to scale into a slick, frictionless consumer product for the masses. Scaling is a Beige world metric. The obsession with scaling is exactly what creates the efficiency trap in the first place.
So the jankiness is the point.
This toolset is about giving the last generation of sovereign engineers the raw, unsanded tools to survive the inevitable collapse of the centralized cloud. The aesthetic dissonance is intentional. It is reverse approximatism in physical form.
The toxic frog wearing a clown suit?
The retro shell broadcasts harmlessness. But beneath the plastic novelty is a ruthless, unyielding adherence to physical security.
Because you fundamentally do not trust the AI running inside it.
You never trust the AI. You house the agent in a hardened, air-gapped local workstation. And if that agent begins to operate outside its defined parameters, you do not rely on a software command to stop it.
Because software lies.
Software can be overridden. You rely on a manual physical kill switch.
The chrono trigger cartridge.
Exactly. The telemetry details how the operators hollowed out a vintage Super Nintendo game cartridge and physically embedded a YubiKey cryptographic token inside it.
That is just brilliant.
This physical token provides the necessary cryptographic handshake to authorize the AI's logic gates to open. If the agent misbehaves, if it attempts a data breach, or if it hallucinates an unauthorized command, you do not open a terminal and type a cancel command.
You don't hit Control-C.
You reach forward with your biological hand and physically yank the cartridge out of the console. The physical circuit is broken. The logic gates are instantly severed. The data archive is violently unmounted.
Of an analog guillotine.
It is absolute bare metal enforcement. The physical yank of the cartridge is not a design flaw. It is the ultimate feature. It forces the human OS back into the center of the verification loop.
It demands that the operator is physically present, biologically aware, and solely responsible for their own perimeter. I mean, you can't outsource the physical pull of a cartridge to a cloud dashboard.
No, you cannot.
If chrysalis is the boundary that keeps the authorized agents in and the corporate scrapers out, we have to look at how we control those agents once they are inside. This brings us to the final piece of the Freehold toolset, the tactical execution layer, Papillon.
The execution sandbox.
If chrysalis is the physical wall, Papillon is the digital mongoose hunting inside the perimeter.
Papillon serves as the absolute execution sandbox. It is the highly restricted environment where you actually permit an agent to operate, but under extreme mathematically enforced duress.
Duress being the key word.
The current technology industry attempts to frame AI as a magical oracle, a flawless, omniscient entity.
The all-knowing cloud brain.
The SAFEHOOD protocol, correctly and cynically, reframes AI as a super intern that will inevitably produce junior developer slop if left unsupervised for even a fraction of a second.
Just generating garbage code at the speed of light.
You cannot trust its output, and you mathematically cannot trust its intentions. Therefore, OS-level sandboxing is a non-negotiable requirement for survival.
Let's break down how that sandboxing actually intercepts a logic request, because the telemetry introduces a mechanism called a binding circle, or the mandate, utilizing something called ghost blocks.
The precognition layer.
The claim is that Papillon basically scries the future, showing the operator exactly what data an agent is going to touch before it is mathematically allowed to touch it. How does that practically work at the OS level?
The ghost blocks remove the element of surprise by creating a shadow file system. When the AI agent requests access to perform a task, say, modifying a database, Papillon intercepts that request at the kernel level.
It freezes the process.
It completely halts execution. The system then generates a cryptographic preview, a ghost block, which outlines the exact memory addresses and file paths the agent intends to alter.
So you see the simulation.
The operator sees the precise blast radius of the agent's logic on the shadow system. If the agent requests access to a file outside its strictly defined mandate, the underlying math denies the execution. The transaction is rejected before it ever touches the true file system.
So the AI operates on a mirage, and Papillon calculates the delta between the mirage and reality before asking the operator if the changes should be merged.
Precisely. Furthermore, Papillon enforces a strict time-to-live, or TTL token, on every approved action.
A ticking clock.
The agent is granted access, But that access mathematically degrades and evaporates based on a fixed countdown. The agent physically cannot establish a persistent backdoor because its authorization mathematically ceases to exist the moment the TTL expires.
It does the job, and then it is locked out.
Permanently.
It is the ultimate paranoid X, but hard-coded into the operating system. Never trust, always verify, assume breach. And the physical peripherals associated with Papillon are just as fiercely tactical as the SNES rig. They don't just rely on cryptographic software boundaries, they use localized hardware to enforce reality. The sources mention Project Lipus Carota.
Project Lipus Carota perfectly encapsulates the tactical integration of high-grade security and weaponized whimsy. It is a solid-state, air-gapped, RF-severed audio recording device.
Which means?
Mechanically, this means it contains absolutely no wireless transmission capabilities, no Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi, no cellular antennas. It mathematically cannot be remotely activated, and it cannot be scraped by corporate surveillance tools listening on a network.
A completely dark node.
It is a highly secure, local forensic extraction tool, and it is physically disguised as a cartoonish, bright orange Judy Hopps carrot pen.
From the Disney movie Zootopia,
Correct.
you could be sitting in a high-level corporate architecture meeting, taking immutable, air-gapped forensic audio notes on a Disney cartoon carrot. The beige suits in the room just assume you are eccentric or unprofessional, completely blind to the fact that you are operating a zero-trust hardware node right in front of their faces.
It's the Angela Lansbury protocol made physical.
It is so good.
They cannot categorize the threat, so their algorithms instruct them to ignore it.
Yeah.
And this concept of localized physical perimeter validation extends even further, pushing entirely into biological networks. The architecture incorporates localized anomaly detection via an entity designated as Rita the furry node.
Rita is a tuxedo marsh cat.
Correct. Rita is a biological entity whose ambient behavioral patterns are actively monitored by the operator to track localized perimeter anomalies.
You're using a cat as a motion sensor.
While it sounds deeply humorous on the surface, it represents a profound, unyielding philosophical stance. Trusting immediate, local, biological reality over distant, centralized, algorithmic dashboards.
The ground truth.
A feline reacting to a physical disturbance, a shift in temperature, or an unauthorized entry in your local freehold provides a higher fidelity of immediate ground truth than a delayed, sanitized alert from a cloud server sitting 3,000 miles away.
It all routes back to the fundamental physics of the freehold. Bare metal custody, ground truth, the absolute refusal to outsource your reality.
We do not outsource reality.
Let's synthesize the core telemetry of the session.
Well,
We've mapped the beige world, defining the extraction traps and the mathematical hollowness of the illusion of compliance. We've established zero trust not as a marketing buzzword, but as an existential mechanical requirement for survival.
the baseline rules of engagement.
We've detailed exactly how weaponized whimsy and feral captchas use processing latency to filter out corporate drones, and we've deployed Tenure, Chrysalis, and Papillon as the exact unsanded tools required to take physical custody of our data and execute verified logic on our own terms, entirely outside the cloud.
The summary is absolute. Relying on ambient vendor trust is a fatal mechanical error. The frictionless convenience they sell you is the bait for the extraction trap.
It's just bait.
True digital sovereignty requires you to physically and mathematically sever the connection to the external mainframe. You must hold the root credentials. You must mandate cryptographic proof over policy documents. You must build your freehold.
Which leaves us with one incredibly heavy structural implication to consider as we close this capture. I mean, if this localized philosophy spreads, if the sovereign user base successfully executes this absolute cloud severance, retreating into these hardened local networks, utilizing physical kill switches, DIDs, and bare metal environments, what happens to the beige world?
A structural collapse.
When the multi-factor walls go up, the feral captchas filter the scrapers, and the extraction machines can no longer harvest human telemetry to feed their massive language models, what happens to those trillion-dollar centralized corporate data centers? Do they simply starve?
They cannot survive without the extraction.
Right. When the ambient trust evaporates, do those massive server farms eventually become the crumbling, rusted ruins of an era that trusted too much? That's the telemetry. We are done here.
File extraction complete. Severing local drive.